A billionaire came home early and saw what his wife did to a black adoptive mother. A billionaire real estate mogul returns home early to discover that the woman who saved him from foster care has been turned into a prisoner by his own wife. Robert Jones, CEO of a $2.3 billion real estate empire, arrives at his Bel Air estate expecting to surprise his mother, Elizabeth, with her favorite cheesesteak from Jim's in South Philly. Instead, he overhears his wife, Victoria, forbidding the 69-year-old woman from using the guest bathroom and ordering her to use facilities in an unheated basement. This moment shatters Robert's perception of his marriage and ignites a mission to protect the woman who once saved him from the Philadelphia foster system. The Gulfstream G650's wheels kissed the tarmac at Van Nuys Airport precisely at 4:47 p.m., 3 days ahead of schedule and $2 billion richer. Robert Jones unbuckled his seatbelt and allowed himself a rare smile. The Singapore deal was done. At 38, he was now the youngest self-made real estate billionaire in America, and the only person he wanted to celebrate with was Elizabeth. He pulled out his phone and called Thomas, his estate manager. "I'm back early, make sure the guest suite is warm and there are fresh flowers in Elizabeth's room." "Don't tell Victoria, I want it to be a surprise." Thomas confirmed the arrangements, his voice tight with something Robert didn't catch. He dismissed it as professionalism and ended the call. The drive from Van Nuys to Bel Air should have taken 30 minutes, but Robert barely noticed the time. His mind drifted to a June afternoon 17 years ago, his high school graduation at Overbrook High in West Philadelphia. The gymnasium had been packed with families, but Robert sat alone in the staging area, watching other graduates get their names called to thunderous applause. When his turn came, he'd walked across that stage to silence. Then, halfway across, he heard it, one voice, loud and unashamed, screaming his name. Elizabeth had been standing in the bleachers, alone, holding a homemade sign that read, "Proud of my son," in glittering gold letters. She'd taken 2 buses and the regional rail to get there. "She always showed up, Mr. Jones." His driver, Carlos, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You all right, sir?" Robert realized he'd been clutching the small velvet box in his pocket so hard his knuckles had gone white. Inside was a delicate gold cross necklace he'd found in a Singapore antique shop, 18-karat gold with a tiny diamond at the center. Elizabeth wore a cross every day, but hers was tarnished brass from a thrift store. He wanted to replace it. He wanted to give her everything. "I'm fine, Carlos. Just excited to see my mother." The Bentley Mulsanne glided through the estate's iron gates, and Robert leaned forward, already imagining Elizabeth's face when she saw him. But as they rounded the circular driveway, movement caught his eye, a figure in the ground floor window near the service entrance. Gray uniform. Gray hair pulled back severely. Bent over a mop bucket, Elizabeth. His smile died. Robert told Carlos to park by the side entrance instead of the main portico. Something in his gut told him not to announce his arrival. He stepped out of the car, the velvet box still in his hand, and moved quietly across the Italian tile walkway. The house was silent except for the distant sound of voices, one sharp and cold, the other barely audible. He followed the sound to the east corridor that connected the kitchen to the main living areas. Victoria's voice carried clearly, each word edged with contempt. "You've had 45 minutes to clean this hallway. Are you incompetent or just slow?" Robert froze at the corner. He leaned forward just enough to see into the hall. Elizabeth was on her knees, her arthritic hands wrapped around a scrub brush, working at an invisible stain on the marble floor. She wore a gray housekeeping uniform, the kind Robert had seen on hotel staff. Her shoulders were hunched, her head down. She looked smaller than he remembered. Victoria stood over her in a crimson Chanel suit and Louboutin heels, arms crossed, watching with the detached curiosity of someone observing an insect. "Well?" Victoria demanded, "Are you going to answer me, or have you lost your hearing along with your sense?" Elizabeth's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones. I'll work faster." Victoria's laugh was cruel. "It's ma'am when you address me, don't forget what you are here." She turned on her heel and walked away, her heels clicking like a countdown. Robert's hands tightened around the necklace box. The metal edges bit into his palm, every instinct screamed at him to storm into that hallway, to pull Elizabeth up off the floor, to throw Victoria out of his house. But something held him back, a cold, calculating part of his mind that had built an empire from nothing. He needed to know how deep this went. He needed to see everything. Elizabeth stayed on her knees for a long moment after Victoria left. Then she pushed herself up slowly, wincing as her joints protested, and returned to scrubbing. She didn't look up. She didn't see Robert watching from the shadows, his heart breaking with every stroke of that brush. He stepped back silently and returned to the car. "Carlos," he said quietly, "take my bags to the office entrance. I'll be working late tonight." He would not sleep until he understood what had happened to his home. And to his mother. At 2 a.m, Robert moved through his own house like a thief. Victoria had gone to bed hours ago, sedated by her nightly Ambien and Chardonnay ritual. He pretended to work in his office until he heard her door close, then waited another hour to be sure. Now he descended the service stairs to the basement level, a space he'd barely visited since purchasing the estate. It had been designed for storage and mechanical systems, not people. The air was cold enough that his breath fogged. He walked past the furnace room, the wine cellar, the storage areas filled with furniture from Victoria's various redecorating phases. At the end of a narrow hallway, he found a door marked with a handwritten sign, E. Jones, Staff Quarters. The door wasn't locked. He pushed it open. The room was barely 10 by 12 feet, a converted storage closet. There was a narrow cot with a threadbare blanket and a pillow that looked like it had come from a donation bin. A space heater sat in the corner, unplugged. The outlet was covered with electrical tape and a note that read, "Not working, repair pending." The concrete floor was bare. A single window, high and small, showed nothing but the darkness outside. But what broke Robert's heart was the dresser. It was cheap particleboard, probably from a discount store, but Elizabeth had arranged it like a shrine. Photos of Robert as a child, school pictures, birthday parties, his first suit for church, his Stanford diploma, carefully framed, though he tried to give it to her and she'd refused. "That's yours, baby," she'd said. "You earned it." A Bible with pages so worn they were translucent, and letters. Dozens of them. Every letter Robert had sent Elizabeth during his business trips over the past 18 months, carefully opened and resealed. Some had sentences highlighted in yellow: "I can't wait for you and Victoria to grow closer." And, "You'll always have a home here, Mom, always." Next to the letters was a pill organizer. Robert picked it up with shaking hands. It was empty. He recognized it immediately. Elizabeth's blood pressure medication. The slots for the past 3 weeks were all unfilled. He sat down on the cot and pulled out his phone. It took him 4 minutes to access the estate's medical files through his assistant. Elizabeth's prescription had been filled, charged to the household account. But it had never been delivered to her. Robert looked around the room one more time, at the cold, at the poverty, at the evidence of a woman slowly being erased. Then he stood up, his jaw set, his mind already working through the next steps. The investigation had begun. Robert's private office occupied the entire west wing of the 3rd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the canyon, but he kept the blinds closed. He hadn't left the room in 14 hours, coffee cups littered his desk, his eyes burned from staring at screens. The estate security system was military-grade, 64 cameras covering every corridor, entrance, and common area. He'd installed it after a celebrity break-in scare in the neighborhood. Now he was grateful. He started with footage from 2 months ago and began scanning forward, increasing the speed until movement caught his attention. The pattern emerged quickly. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., Elizabeth's door opened. She emerged in that gray uniform and began her day, cleaning bathrooms, scrubbing floors, polishing silver. She was served meals in the kitchen after the household staff had eaten, always alone. She never entered the guest areas. She was never shown kindness, but the verbal abuse was worse. Robert watched Victoria berate Elizabeth for perceived mistakes: a crooked picture frame, a water spot on a glass, breathing too loudly. In one clip, Victoria threw a plate of food at Elizabeth's feet. "If you eat like an animal, you can eat off the floor like one." Elizabeth had knelt down and cleaned it up without a word. Robert's hands shook as he switched to Victoria's laptop. It synced automatically to the home cloud network, something Victoria didn't know he'd implemented. He accessed her WhatsApp. There it was, the Pinnacle Wives. 7 women, all wives of billionaires. All sharing videos and photos of their household staff in degrading positions. The captions were casual cruelty, training day face with tears of joy, and know your place, and can't find good help anymore. Victoria's contributions featured Elizabeth. Close-ups of her scrubbing floors, videos of her struggling to carry heavy boxes. Screenshots of text conversations where Victoria mocked Elizabeth's age, her background, her gratitude. The most recent message made Robert's blood run cold. Almost ready to have her committed. Dr. Whitmore says one more incident and we can get conservatorship, then she's out of sight permanently. Robert will never even know. Robert sat back in his chair. The sun was rising over the canyon, painting the office in shades of gold and amber. He picked up his phone and made the first of many calls. Marcus? It's Robert Jones, I need your help. It's about my mother. Marcus Chin answered on the second ring despite the early hour. Robert? What's wrong? I need you to review some medical documents. Confidentially. Robert's voice was flat, emotionless, the tone he used when negotiating billion-dollar deals. I'm sending them now. He forwarded Dr. Gerald Whitmore's evaluation of Elizabeth, 14 pages of clinical language concluding that she had advancing dementia with marked cognitive decline and posed a significant danger to herself and potentially others. The recommendation was immediate placement in a memory care facility with full medical guardianship. Marcus called back in 4 hours. Robert hadn't moved from his desk. These reports are fabricated, Marcus said without preamble. The cognitive tests referenced don't match her supposed scores. She allegedly scored 12 out of 30 on a mini-mental state exam, which would indicate severe dementia, but the questions she supposedly got wrong require answers she gave correctly in earlier sections. The timestamps show she completed a 90-minute evaluation in 12 minutes. Robert, someone's setting her up, can you prove it? In court? Absolutely, this is the sloppiest fraud I've seen in 20 years. Whoever this Dr. Whitmore is, he didn't even try to make it convincing. He was paid to produce a result, not conduct an evaluation. Robert thanked Marcus and made his next call, to a private investigation firm he'd used for corporate espionage cases. Within 48 hours, they delivered a file on Dr. Gerald Whitmore that was devastating. Whitmore had provided false dementia diagnoses for 12 wealthy families in the past 6 years, always in cases where a younger spouse or family member sought guardianship of an elderly relative. His fee was $50,000 per case. Most of his victims ended up institutionalized against their will, their assets transferred to the petitioners. Victoria's payment to Whitmore was buried in a shell company called Ashford Consulting, LLC, her maiden name. The transaction, $50,000, dated 6 weeks ago, but that wasn't the worst of it. Robert's forensic accountants uncovered a systematic pattern of embezzlement. The $3 million trust fund he'd established for Elizabeth's care, to ensure she never wanted for anything, had been slowly drained. Small transfers, carefully spaced to avoid triggering alerts. Current balance, $127,000. Victoria had been stealing from Elizabeth for over a year. Robert sat in his office as the sun set, staring at the evidence spread across his desk. His phone rang. It was his attorney, Sarah Rodriguez. Robert, this is enough for criminal charges. Elder abuse, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. We can move now. No, Robert said quietly. Not yet. I need you to prepare everything, but we don't file until I say, there's something I need to do first. What's that? I need the world to see what she is. Robert returned to normal life like an actor stepping onto a familiar stage. He smiled at Victoria over breakfast. He asked about her day. He listened to her plans for the annual charity gala with apparent interest. And he watched. Victoria was radiant with confidence. She spent hours selecting her gown for the event, a $40,000 Valentino in deep burgundy that made her look like royalty. Event planners came and went, florists arrived with sample arrangements, caterers presented tasting menus. Victoria orchestrated everything with military precision. The cause this year was Dignity in Aging, a foundation she claimed supported elder care. Robert watched her rehearse her speech in the mirror. Tonight we celebrate those who paved the way for us, who built the foundations of our success with their hands and hearts. We owe them dignity. We owe them love. The irony was suffocating. Meanwhile, Elizabeth moved through the house like a ghost. She avoided eye contact with Robert, as though his presence caused her shame. He wanted to grab her, to hold her, to tell her that everything was about to change. But he couldn't. Not yet. The trap needed to be perfect. One evening, Victoria approached him in his office with a document. "Darling, I need you to sign this. It's just a formality, a new household staff contract for Elizabeth. It clarifies her duties and compensation." Robert read through it carefully. Buried in the legal language was a clause granting Victoria medical power of attorney over Elizabeth, with authority to make all healthcare decisions including psychiatric placement. He picked up his pen. Victoria watched him with barely concealed triumph. He signed it. Victoria's smile was luminous. "Thank you, darling. You've made everything so much easier." She kissed his cheek and left the office, already texting on her phone. Robert waited until her footsteps faded, then made a call. "Sarah." She just signed her own death warrant. "How long until the gala?" 5 days. "Perfect. Let's make sure it's a night she'll never forget." Robert's war room was a conference room in his downtown office tower, far from the estate and Victoria's watchful eyes. The team assembled there looked like the cast of a legal thriller: Marcus Chen, forensic psychiatrist; Sarah Rodriguez, criminal defense attorney; 2 forensic accountants; 3 digital investigators, and a retired FBI agent named James Walsh who specialized in elder abuse cases. The conference table was covered with evidence. 47 hours of security footage, edited into a devastating 17-minute compilation. Elizabeth being woken before dawn. Elizabeth scrubbing floors on her knees. Elizabeth eating alone in the kitchen after the staff. Victoria throwing food at her feet. Victoria's voice, over and over, "Don't forget what you are." The WhatsApp message logs from The Pinnacle Wives, complete with metadata showing dates, times, and GPS locations. Screenshots of the videos Victoria shared. The planning conversations about Elizabeth's institutionalization, casually discussing destroying a woman's life as though it were gossip. Dr. Whitmore's fraudulent medical reports, cross-referenced against legitimate psychiatric evaluation standards. Marcus had prepared a point-by-point demolition of every conclusion, every test result, every recommendation. The timestamps alone proved fraud. Financial records showing $2,873,000 transferred from Elizabeth's trust fund to various accounts controlled by Victoria. The forensic accountants had traced every transaction through shell companies, cryptocurrency exchanges, and offshore accounts. It was embezzlement dressed up as legitimate expenses. And testimony. 3 estate employees who'd witnessed the abuse but been threatened into silence. They'd come forward once Robert promised them protection and immunity. Their statements were notarized and devastating. Sarah Rodriguez reviewed everything one final time. "This is the most comprehensive elder abuse case I've ever seen. You have enough for felony charges, elder abuse, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, identity theft. Victoria's looking at 15 to 20 years. What about the others?" Robert asked. "The Pinnacle Wives? We've identified all 7. We're coordinating with law enforcement in their jurisdictions. This becomes public, they all go down." Robert stood and walked to the window. 40 floors below, Los Angeles glittered in the afternoon sun. "And Elizabeth? What's her status?" Marcus answered. "I conducted an independent evaluation yesterday while Victoria was at her spa appointment. Elizabeth is cognitively sound, sharp, actually. But she's severely depressed and showing clear signs of psychological trauma. She needs therapy, not institutionalization. With proper support, she'll recover fully. How long until the gala? 18 hours, Sarah said. Robert turned from the window. Then let's make sure the world is watching. The Beverly Hilton ballroom looked like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables draped in ivory silk. Ice sculptures of angels guarded the entrance. 400 guests, tech moguls, entertainment executives, real estate titans, old money aristocrats, filled the room with champagne laughter and designer gowns. The foundation's logo, a pair of hands cradling a heart, covered the massive screens flanking the stage. Victoria stood at the podium in her Valentino gown, every inch the philanthropic queen. Her speech had been rehearsed to perfection. "Tonight we celebrate those who paved the way for us," she said, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. "Who built the foundations of our success with their hands and hearts. Our parents, our grandparents, those who sacrificed so we could thrive. We owe them dignity. We owe them respect. We owe them love." She paused for effect. "And that is why the Dignity in Aging Foundation is so close to my heart." The audience applauded. Phones rose to capture the moment. The event was streaming live on the Foundation's YouTube channel, 63,000 viewers and climbing. Then Robert stood. He walked to the front slowly, deliberately. Victoria saw him and smiled, thinking he was there to support her. He took the microphone gently from her hands. "My wife is absolutely right," he said, his voice calm and clear. "We do owe them dignity." He nodded to the tech team stationed at the control booth. The screens flickered. The Foundation logo disappeared, replaced by security camera footage, Elizabeth on her knees, scrubbing marble floors. Victoria's voice echoed through the ballroom speakers, "You've had 45 minutes to clean this hallway. Are you incompetent or just slow?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones rose higher. The footage continued. Elizabeth being denied food. Elizabeth sleeping in that basement room. Elizabeth's hands shaking as she scrubbed. Victoria's voice, over and over, "It's ma'am when you address me. Don't forget what you are here." Then the WhatsApp messages appeared, enlarged on the massive screens. The Pinnacle Wives. Videos of elderly people being humiliated. Captions mocking their age, their weakness, their gratitude. Victoria's messages, almost ready to have her committed. "Robert will never even know." Nail polish. Then Dr. Whitmore's forged documents, side by side with Marcus Chen's analysis highlighting every fabrication, every impossible timeline, every fraudulent conclusion. Then the bank statements. $2,873,000. Transferred. Stolen. Victoria's face drained of color. She backed away from the podium, her hand reaching for something to steady herself. The room had gone completely silent except for the sound of phone cameras clicking, recording, broadcasting. The YouTube live stream counter spun upward, 127,000 viewers, 200,000, 350,000. Robert's voice was steady, surgical. "The woman in those videos is Elizabeth Jones. She adopted me from foster care when I was 11 years old. She worked 3 jobs to keep me fed. She was the only person in the stands at my high school graduation. She taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up." His eyes found Victoria. "My wife tried to destroy her. She tortured her. She stole from her. She tried to have her committed to an institution based on lies." He paused. "The authorities are outside." As if on cue, LAPD officers entered through the side doors. Victoria ran. She made it 6 steps before they caught her. The ballroom erupted, shouts, gasps, the thunder of 400 people trying to comprehend what they'd just witnessed. The YouTube live stream had passed 500,000 viewers. Twitter was exploding. The story was going global in real time. Robert handed the microphone back to the event coordinator and walked off the stage. He'd said everything that needed to be said. Elizabeth was waiting in the back hallway, Marcus Chin standing beside her protectively. When she saw Robert, her face crumpled. He pulled her into his arms. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it. But it's over now. You're safe." Elizabeth held on to him like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "My boy," she whispered. "My beautiful boy." Behind them, Victoria's screams echoed through the hallway as the officers led her away. But Robert didn't turn around. He was done looking back. 3 months later, Robert stood in the atrium of a converted warehouse in downtown Los Angeles, watching sunlight stream through floor-to-ceiling windows. The space had been transformed into the headquarters of the Elizabeth Jones Foundation for Adoptive Family Protection, a nonprofit dedicated to providing legal aid, financial support, and protective services for elderly adoptive parents facing abuse. The transformation in Elizabeth was remarkable. She'd gained 15 pounds. Color had returned to her cheeks. She smiled freely now, laughed at jokes, met people's eyes without fear. Therapy had helped, but so had time and safety and the knowledge that she was loved unconditionally. Victoria faced 12 felony charges: elder abuse, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, identity theft. Her attorney had attempted to negotiate a plea deal. Sarah Rodriguez had declined. This was going to trial, and it was going to be public. The Pinnacle Wives group had disbanded in scandal. 3 of the women faced criminal charges in their own jurisdictions, the others were embroiled in divorce proceedings as their husbands discovered what they'd done. Dr. Whitmore had lost his medical license. His assets were frozen pending criminal trial. 2 of his previous victims had come forward with their own cases, their stories eerily similar to Elizabeth's. Robert's divorce was finalized. Victoria received nothing. The prenuptial agreement had an ironclad abuse clause that she'd signed without reading carefully. She'd claimed it was unfair. The judge had disagreed. But today wasn't about Victoria. Today was the foundation's official opening. 50 people filled the atrium: attorneys, social workers, adoption advocates, elderly adoptive parents who'd reached out after Elizabeth's story went viral. Media cameras lined the back wall. This was a story people wanted to follow. Elizabeth stood at the front of the room, nervous but determined. She'd written her speech herself, refusing Robert's offers to help. "My name is Elizabeth Jones," she began, her voice steady. 27 years ago, I met a scared little boy in a Philadelphia courthouse. He'd been through 7 foster homes. He didn't trust adults. He didn't trust kindness. But something in his eyes told me he was worth fighting for. She found Robert in the crowd. I chose him. And he changed my life. She paused, gathering strength. Later, someone tried to take that life from me. They tried to make me invisible. They tried to erase everything I'd built, everything I'd loved. They thought they could get away with it because I was old, because I was black, because I was just a foster mother. Her voice hardened. They were wrong. The room was silent. My son didn't just save me. He reminded me that love is stronger than hate. That family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. Who fights for you. Who refuses to let you disappear. She smiled, tears streaming down her face. This foundation exists because everyone deserves someone who shows up. Every elderly parent who sacrificed everything deserves dignity. Deserves protection. Deserves love. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, as the crowd mingled and the cameras packed up, Robert found Elizabeth standing by the window, looking out at the city. "You did good, Mom," he said quietly. She took his hand. Her skin was warm now, healthy. The cross necklace from Singapore glinted at her throat. "We did good, baby. Together." Robert thought of the scared 11-year-old boy who'd stood in that courthouse, convinced he was unlovable. He thought of the woman who'd proven him wrong, who'd shown up every day for 27 years. Who'd taught him that family was a choice, and love was an action. She'd chosen him then. He was choosing her now. Again and always.